Okay, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Councilman Alf, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record reflect we have 5 callers via phone. Roll call, please, Stacia.
Dale Householder.
Here.
Jason Gillespie.
Here.
Carl Doty.
Here.
Gary Elk.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum. Any conflict of interest, council, with any of the items that are listed on the agenda for action items or discussion today? Seeing none, let's move to the consent calendar. Consent calendar 5A, approval of 9/28/2020 agenda. 5B, approval of 9/14/2020 meeting minutes. And 5C, approval of claims. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Motion to approve, Alderman Householder. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Alderman Gillespie. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dale Householder.
Yes.
Jason Gillespie.
Aye.
Carl Doty.
Yes.
Gary Elk.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries. Public comment, which we have a full house here today, so it's good to see all these faces. Members of the public are invited to speak on any matter that is not on the agenda. We ask that if you do speak, you come up to the podium, please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes per speaker.
Leroy Barker, Lacey's Court. I just have a question. I used to be able to come up here at this time and ask questions and get a response. And I know your agenda's changed for some reason. We have no interaction with the council people. You have not allowed us to be able to get response if we have a question or anything. And my suggestion is you open that up to where we can ask questions if we have a concern on something and get some responses.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments?
My name is Gayla Barker. I live on Lacey's Court also. I sleep with him. Anyway, for many, many years, I worked for the state of California facilitating meetings. And I was kind of known as the top facilitator for the state of California. And when I leave these meetings, I always leave very tense. And I don't think I should be feeling tense when I leave the meetings. I would like you to consider reformatting your meeting so that we do have the opportunity to ask questions. After it's been discussed and before it votes, we cannot offer any comments. We are shut down. We are told to sit down and be quiet. There needs to be a spot there, and I hope you will consider, all of you members, reformatting your meeting so that you have more public input, so that we feel better about it as well.
Thank you for your comments. Any others?
Ed Sumby, 369 Deegan Drive. I'm just curious, when somebody comes in and develops, sells lots or develops an area, just as Mr. Skull did, he's responsible for the streets. Doesn't a developer come in here if he's gonna sell lots? Why does it get put on the landowners to do the paving?
Okay.
If somebody comes and develops an area, sells lots, and you just let them go ahead and do it, whether you think it's gonna get a tax base or what, it should be their responsibility to do what needs to be done, not put on the city or the individuals that do live on that street.
Okay. So this particular item, typically what we would do is we would go back and we would answer those questions. You'll see that there's a report out item with regard to that. I'm going to ask that we put this as a discussion item for our next meeting so we can have an open dialogue with regard to that. Thank you, Mr. Sumby.
Next meeting is what date?
October 13th, Tuesday, because we are closed on Monday.
I won't be here, but I hope you do the right thing.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment. Action item 7A, approval of code of conduct.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we table this. The former council is the only ones that had the opportunity to really discuss this among members. Every one of us, except Jason, are new to this, haven't had a chance to discuss before it's an action item, so
Okay.
I'd like to motion to table this for further discussion.
So Alderman Householder, would you prefer that we put it under a discussion item for the next meeting
Yes.
instead of an action item?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so Stacia, that would be table it as an action item and reflect that it will be a discussion item for the council members at our next meeting. Okay,
I'll second that for the same reason, so everybody can dig into it and get a good understanding of it, and we can chat about it some more.
okay, we have a second to that. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote please, Stacia?
Jason Gillespie,
Yes.
Carl Doty,
Yes.
Gary Elk,
Yes.
Dale Householder.
Yes.
Motion carries. So as a point of information, as we start to go into the remaining action items, I'd like to remind the public that this meeting is a business meeting that will be conducted by the council. After each of the items that we have that are listed with the remainder of the action items, there will be a time that the public has the opportunity to speak. The way that we will handle this, according to Robert's Rules of Order, which is the guidelines that we use for public meetings, we will announce the item. It will be identified by one of the staff members or whoever is here to speak to that. The council will have a brief discussion, after which point we will open it up for public comment. At that point, we ask that you please make sure that your comments are limited to 3 minutes apiece. You will have the opportunity to give the council any information that will be beneficial to them in making their decision. Public comment will be closed. It will be reopened to council motion as well as further discussion. There will be no additional public comment taken. These meetings are business meetings that are designed for the council to do business and not a session of dialogue. Council members can be reached. They have phone numbers, they have email. If there are any questions or concerns about anything in the city, they can be reached, not necessarily in this forum, but via telephone or email. So let's proceed with action item 7B, approval to purchase wastewater treatment facility SCADA upgrades. Brett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So in your packet is a price quote that we've received from Dakota Pump to do system upgrades and enhancements to our wastewater treatment facility. So this is something that we've been needing for the past several years, as the original equipment is still what's operating that plant. And that's been in operation now for 13, 14 years. And so the software and the hardware is starting to not be upgraded, not as reliable as we need it to be. So over the past couple of years, we've had trouble in the sense of finding a different vendor, as we were looking for two things. One, we were looking for a different software system, because the software system that we utilize right now, it functions fine, but with our technical support and troubleshooting support, the company that services us is lacking. They're located physically on the other side of the state, and whenever we've had either hardware or software issues, we try to resolve them over the phone or dial in remotely, but a lot of the times those can't be accomplished, and so we would have to have them physically come out, and that cost just to get them out here would be anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 just to show up at our front doorstep to address those issues. So one of our things was replace the software with something that was a little bit more user-friendly and still doing essentially comparable job. The other part was having close support at our fingertips in case we need it. And so one of the challenges, again, is in looking at other companies. We found a couple out of Sioux Falls that primarily would do the software piece, but not necessarily the hardware piece. And again, we don't check that box of having somebody close by in case we have a troubleshooting need. So just within the last, probably 6 months, we've been in discussion with Dakota Pump, and that's who this proposal is from. They're relatively new in the Black Hills. They are based here. So it checks off one of our boxes as far as having local support. This company has come in, they've actually done a in-person assessment of our plant. So they haven't just quoted us something over the phone, they've actually gone through our system and know exactly what electronic panels that we have, how those panels need to communicate with one another, the software system that we're currently utilizing, and all of the challenges that Jim Evans deals with on a regular basis. So they actually sat down and talked about essentially the complete solution with Jim, about what his needs are, what challenges he's currently having. They've done an assessment on our hardware, and a lot of our hardware is out of date, that it's gonna be hard to find parts to replace it if they go belly up. And so they have a plan, which is before you, to replace that hardware, to make sure that the systems talk to one another. And that we also add the functionality of remote viewing the plant and what's going on. So the goal there is, when we get a trouble alarm in the past, the system would just call us and say, hey, we've got a trouble alert. It wouldn't necessarily tell us what's going on or why there's a trouble alert. With this new software, we'll be able to dial in remotely with a smartphone or a tablet, and we'll get notifications that there's something going on. We'll be able to better track what exactly the problem is, if it's a power failure, if there's water in the basement area that shouldn't be, or if one of the mechanisms isn't functioning. One of the relays will trigger that, and we'll know more specifically what the problems are. We looked at 2 different ways to go about this new software and hardware. One was essentially a software purchase that would get installed on one of our computers, and then we would operate it. Actually, it's a lot more cost effective and achieves the same goal if we go through a cloud solution with the internet. And so that's what's proposed to you on this, is that we operate through the cloud. Even if the internet goes down, we would still have functionality at the plant. It's really, with most software, and we do it with our finance software too, is that there's software out on the cloud, is we don't have to worry about upgrading the software. If there's a problem with the software, they take care of everything. We're just dialing it up on our end. So with Dakota Pump, the next question we asked is, okay, you're local, but who do you service? So they're in a project right now with City of Spearfish to convert them over to their system. Rapid City's been on their system probably for 2.5 years. And then there's another Keystone that's on them. Have received good feedback. I've had a couple of different conversations with Jim Evans, because at the end of the day, he's the one that's got to feel comfortable about the system working and functioning as he needs it. Those guys from Dakota Pump, like I said, have put in several hours of review into our schematics and trying to figure out exactly what we need. So really, this is kind of the only option that is local upgrade of software. Hardware, which is so important, because there really hasn't been much hardware upgrade to that plant since it went online. And so this is probably the best solution that we've come across in order to bring this plant up to date, so to speak. The dollar amount, as you can see, there's the different panels they list in here. The dollar amount is $46,950. And that takes care of the hardware plus the monitoring service part and the licenses and whatnot. With installation, they do all of the work, make sure that it functions, and then only at that point, when everything is functioning properly, do they invoice us and we pay the bill. So they're not looking for any money up front. This is kind of one of those things of saying, you know, we can't expect that plant to just function on its own for 15 years without some sort of a system update. And again, these guys are the ones in the best position to offer that service. So I wish I had more options and different companies to bring to you. The ones that I've come across again are really just either the software solution with not much of the tech support, in-person problem-solving piece. This money that we're talking about here, this was part of a discussion, if you remember, during the budget cycle. This was something that's not scheduled for completion in this budgetary cycle of 2020, but it was something that was identified of something that should be moved forward with this year, because we weren't gonna move forward with, I think, the bridge project and there's something else. I know those two budgets don't interlink, but
Well, we weren't gonna do the sewer line
Oh, the-
improvement, so that's why
yeah,
this
the
was.
sewer line improvements for the infiltration. So you had asked for us to look at this and come back with the option, and well, here's the option. So there is money within the sewer improvement fund to make this happen and to get it underway. Chances are the work would be started here within the next month. According to Dakota Pump, they're swamped right now. They would start working on it, but the completion date would probably not be until the end of this year. So it's potential that we wouldn't get billed for it until after the first of the year. Again, we have those sewer improvement funds that are sitting in that fund exactly for this purpose, so. I'm here. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to try and answer them.
Council, any discussion, questions of Brett?
I've got a question under the notes for number 6. It says the yearly invoice for Cloud9 services will be $1,020 per each. What do you mean by per each?
So they're talking about a license. So essentially, we would only need that one license, so it would be that $1,020 annual. And then we can connect to this with whatever devices we already have, whether it's a smartphone, tablet, as long as we have a internet or Wi-Fi connection, then we can dial into it and monitor it remotely and control it.
Okay. Any further discussion, council?
Do you have anybody besides Jim that will be trained on this?
So right now, we have Larry Heddles is working down at the plant. He's doing the lab work, so he would need to be familiar with it. And then also Thomas Nimick, who's our fairly recent hire, he would be brought up to speed to make sure that he would know what to do in case something came up. So Jim works Sunday through Thursday, and then Larry takes over Fridays and Saturdays. So it would be paramount that Larry would understand the system. And then if there ever was trouble, again, we've got the local support where they're based out of Rapid. And it sounds like it's servicing other customers. I think they did some work down in Custer too, that they're up in the area. I know whenever there's lightning strikes and whatnot, electric components kind of tend to get fried, and their tech crews are getting bothered on weekends and whatnot, so that's pretty normal.
So is there any kind of insurance? Some of these panels have got to be pretty expensive for spending $46,000. If lightning strikes one of them, do we have any kind of insurance? Or do we provide anything that would cover that?
So we had, great question. We had a panel go out, probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, up at the main water shop, up by the shop on the hill. We actually had lightning come in and fry that control module, and it's kind of the master water side, where it's telling us the levels of the tank, and automatically telling it when to turn on and off. That one got fried about 4 or 5 years ago. That was submitted into our insurance company. We were able to get a fairly quick turnaround of the replacement panel and rewiring and whatnot. It got fried. But that was a payout of at least $30,000. I think it was like 30 or 35,000 to replace that. So we were able to manually operate that system and make sure that the tanks were at the right levels. Meanwhile, it was getting repaired and back up to speed. So it was a complete redo of that panel. So the same coverage would apply down at the plant.
Okay. Alderman Householder, any further questions? Alderman Ock? Alderman Gillespie? Alderman Doty. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and open this item up for public comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium, state your name, and feel free to address the council with any input you have. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. I'm going to bring it back to the council. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Motion to approve, Alderman Householder. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Alderman Alp. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please, Stacia.
Carl Doty,
Yes.
Gary Alp,
Yes.
Dale Householder,
Yes.
Jason Gillespie.
Aye.
All in favor? Motion carries. Action item 7C. First reading, ordinance 2020-03, ordinance amending Chapter 3, licenses and regulation of transient merchant. Ms. Shea?
Transient merchants and temporary structures, tents, have been an issue with brick and mortar businesses in Hill City since 1995. 2009, a petition was presented to City Council with over 185 signatures seeking better regulation of transient merchants. Nothing was done at the council level at that time. In 2019, a second petition with 83 signatures was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission asking for the same thing. Those signatures included the owners of the Harley-Davidson building, handbag store, Farmer's Daughter, Alpine Inn, Beef Jerky store, Things That Rock, Harney Peak Inn, Art Forms Gallery, Black Hills Institute of Geological Research, Granite Sports, Bump in Buffalo, Ben West Gallery, Mountain Souvenirs, and others. Planning Commission directed the formation of a committee consisting of business and property owners and planning commissioners to look into the current municipal code guiding the licensing of transient merchants. The committee met 5 times. They reviewed the transient merchant ordinances from Custer City, Deadwood, Sturgis, Spearfish, and Hot Springs. They presented their findings to the Planning and Zoning Commission on January 6th of 2020. Before the commission began their discussion of the proposed changes, a letter was sent to all commercial property owners within the city limits, outlining what those changes were recommended to occur with this ordinance revision. The commission met and discussed over the course of multiple meetings the proposed changes. All proposed changes have been run by the city attorney and approved by them. Staff believes this revision addresses the main area of concern among our business community, which is prohibiting transient merchants in temporary structures from the central business district. The revision also simplifies the enforcement of transient merchants. Whereas our current code classifies transient merchants by the number of days they're in business within the city limits, the revision classifies transient merchants by the structure they do business out of. The question of, are you a transient merchant or a permanent merchant, is simplified. If in a permanent building, you're a permanent merchant. If you're conducting business in a temporary structure, you're a transient merchant and required to provide the city with contact information, sales tax information, etc. Planning and Zoning Commission at their last meeting directed staff to make some minor verbiage changes, verify acceptance of those changes by the city attorney, which has been done, and move to City Council for the first reading. The commission is satisfied that this code revision meets the intent of what the majority of the public has asked them to do. Ordinance 2020-03, an ordinance amending Chapter 3, licensing and regulation of transient merchants. Be it ordained by the Common Council for the City of Hill City, South Dakota, the following individual sections shall be added/amended to read as follows. Section 3.0903, licensing of transient merchants. A, definitions. For the purpose of this section, a transient merchant is any person, firm, or corporation, partnership or association, or agent thereof, transacting a business where goods and/or services are offered for sale, and any place in this city that is located in a temporary structure. Temporary structure means a structure without any permanent foundation or footings. B, transient merchant license required. No person shall engage in any business as a transient merchant without a transient merchant's license for each structure, stand, tent, car, vehicle, booth, or place used by such merchant. Application. To obtain a license, a transient merchant shall file in the city finance office at least 15 days prior to the commencement of business an application stating his or her name and residence, the proposed start date of the business for which they're submitting the application, description and identification of the place and structure in which he or she proposes to do business, a description of the toilet facilities and their location, and a description of the goods or services he or she intends to handle. Applicant must provide with application proof that all applicable requirements of Hill City Municipal Code, South Dakota Department of Revenue, South Dakota Department of Health, South Dakota Electrical Code, and South Dakota Plumbing Code, if applicable, are being met. With such application, the transient merchant must also provide a certificate of liability insurance with the City of Hill City listed as an additional insured to the said policy. D, fee and duration of license. Transient merchant's license fee shall be $750. This transient merchant license shall be valid for a maximum of 12 days, beginning on the proposed start date set forth in the application for transient merchant's license and ending on the 12th day. The city finance officer shall note on the license the time period for which the license is effective and the location of the toilet facilities associated with said license. The transient merchant's license fee for less than a 12-day period shall be $150 per day, up to the maximum amount of $750. D1, one temporary sign is defined in Chapter 10, Section 1002, definitions of the Hill City Municipal Code. Up to 16 square feet maximum is included with the approved application. E, toilet facilities. In the application for a transient merchant's license, the applicant must provide for the city's approval the type of toilet facilities to be offered, such as porta potties, or contracted with owners of permanent toilet facilities within 300 feet of proposed location of business. Written confirmation of permission to use toilet facilities will be required. Facilities must be available for both employees and customers. F, issuance. Upon submission and approval of the application for a transient merchant license, as well as payment of the required fee, the city finance officer or his or her designated official shall issue a license to the applicant to do business at the place described in the application and for the time which the license fee has been paid in advance. The transient merchant license must be posted in each individual stand during operation. G, sanitation. Transient merchants shall keep the grounds their stands are located on clean, and the area must be returned to its original condition when vacating the location. Failure to keep the area clean can be cause for revocation of the transient merchant's license or a refusal to approve a new license in the future. Merchants are responsible for their own trash removal. H, location. Temporary structures used by transient merchants, such as, but not limited to, vending stands, tents, sheds, vehicles, booths, canopies, awnings, and fences, may be erected on private property which is zoned commercial, provided that a transient merchant's license is obtained and the requisite fee is paid. However, no temporary structure shall be allowed in the locally designated central business district. H1, all temporary structures shall be dismantled and removed from the premises no later than 1 day after the end date set forth in the transient merchant license. 2, all temporary structures used by transient merchants must adhere to the current IBC code version adopted by Common Council. 3, all temporary structures must be outside of clear sight triangles at streets, alleys, and driveways. Sidewalks must have a minimum of 5 feet width of unobstructed space for the clear flow of pedestrian traffic. 4, no exterior storage of any kind will be permitted. I, exemptions from section. This section shall not apply to the following types of sales and activities. 1, to sales where the proceeds are to be used exclusively for religious, charitable, nonprofit, or benevolent purposes. 2, for special community-wide promotions being sponsored and or approved by the City of Hill City or the Hill City Area Chamber of Commerce. 3, to sales to wholesale or retail merchants by sample for future delivery made by representatives or established wholesalers or manufacturers. The sale will be deemed to have been made for future delivery if the product or services are to be delivered at least 7 days subsequent to the date of the sale. 4, to sales of fruits, vegetables, or farm or garden products. 5, lemonade stands or other similar activities. operated by minors or children or youth groups. 6, rummage sales, yard, garage, or estate sales. 7, in any district, a contractor's temporary structure and equipment sheds incidental to a valid building permit. J, penalties for non-compliance. Failure to obtain a license as required by this chapter or any other violations of this chapter may be punishable by the maximum fine and jail as prescribed for Class 2 misdemeanors under South Dakota law for each offense. Each day of operation without such a license or without compliance with the terms of this chapter shall be deemed a separate offense. In addition to the penalty described above, the city may pursue other remedies, including but not limited to injunctive relief and revocation of the transient merchant license permit.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like to add, Ms. Shade?
No.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna look to council now for discussion. Would anyone like to start?
I guess I have a question on number D. It's a 12-day period for $750.
Correct.
Can that be renewed, and if so, how many times?
The way it's written and the way that the committee and planning and zoning intended it to be, it is for a maximum 12-day period. That's it.
I guess I can't agree with that. I think it should be open to more. I mean, if we have somebody that wants to sell longer than 12 days and are willing to pay the fee, we should, I would think, be very open to that. That's more sales tax revenue.
I'm gonna go around now. Alderman Doty, any comments?
Just out of curiosity, what is the physical description of the designated central business district that you're using?
It would be Elm to McGregor on Main Street.
Okay.
Both sides of Main Street.
And that's a designated code in our code book.
Perfect.
So.
Okay. Alderman Doty, any other?
Oh, that's it.
Alderman Gillespie.
I kinda wonder how I can sell fruits and vegetables, but I can't sell the Trump Biden flag. And I'm gonna vote for both of them, so I can say it that way. But I can do that in intent, but I can't sell other stuff. Can anyone got any thoughts for me on that?
So Danny, any?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Jason.
How come I can sell fruits and vegetables in a tent downtown, but I can't sell a flag downtown?
I don't know. That's a very good question. It's in our current code, and it's in everybody else's code, and maybe there was an exception that maybe they predicted a pandemic year where we would have trouble finding fruits and vegetables in our grocery stores, and so they would allow people who have it in their gardens to sell it without having to incur such a high cost.
I will take a stab at that question. So I think in the existing code, that exemption is already in there, where it exempts fruit sellers or produce. I think the assumption that the code makes is that the person selling those fruits and vegetables is also the person who grew those products in their own garden. It's like a backyard or small operation where they're selling the peaches and the apples and the corn and whatnot. So they've produced that product. They themselves have produced it. Obviously, they might have gotten seeds from somebody else, but they planted it and cared for it and planted it. So they have more value added into that product. With the Trump merchandise, it's possible that they made all of those themselves, but more likely they bought all of that material from somebody who created it all, and they're just reselling it. So if I buy a whole bunch of sunglasses, and then I just put them out for display and for sale, I already bought them from somebody, it was just a financial purchase. Then I'm reselling them for twice what I paid and making my profit off of it. I really don't have any buy-in as to making those products. That's the rule that's currently in our code, and I think the new code is just reflecting that same language.
Like farmers markets, that type of thing, if somebody wanted to, do a farmers market once a week, to charge them a transient merchant fee, I mean, you would get no participants, because they just don't make that much.
That was kind of sort of my next question, is this subject to variance. Say we did wanna have a farmer's art market and run it down Main Street and close it up, and we had all kinds of stuff out there that, all the merchants wanted to do, and you could get beans at one end and bread over here and buy a picture down the street,
That'd be awesome. But that's a citywide event, and that would be
Well-
exempt.
down Main Street to start, say.
Yeah, as long as it's,
So is there a
sponsored by
variance
the
procedure that you
chamber
could
or-
go through if something like that were to ever come up?
Yeah.
Fit through in the process, current process?
I just assume it would be more citywide or a sponsored type of event. So the chamber may organize that. They may come to city council and say, hey, we wanna have this event with merchants running up and down the street on the sidewalks. I mean, that would be something that
Okay.
they would need approval from council to do anyway, and
It'd
so it
fall
would
under the
fall under
exemptions.
that exempt, correct. Just like Wine Broom Barbecue and those big events. If they wanted to have food trucks come in, they wanted to have vendors come in, we don't charge each of those vendors, they're kind of all under that special events umbrella. And per our current code, as well as this new proposal, they would be exempt from this.
Thanks.
Okay, Alderman Ock.
No question.
Okay, and we've already heard from
So,
you, unless you have any other questions. Okay, at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to public comment. Again, I'm gonna ask that you please come to the podium and state your name if you have anything to address the council on with regard to this item. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Randy Berger, Warriors Work. I want to thank the city council for taking the time to do this. I was on the committee. I've worked along at this. We've done several things, and I guess one of the reasons about this transient vendors and stuff as having a business nearly 25 years in this town, it really hurts when people come up and ask if I'm just there for the week. And that's one of the bases of this, besides the looks of things, and we just don't want our town looking like a weekend show.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close, oh, yep, go ahead.
I'm Jana Emmel, and I own the business on Main Street too. And I, partly with what Randy's saying, I just wanted to thank Planning and Zoning and the people on the committee, because it's easy to complain, it's easy to have great ideas, but it's hard work to come together and to listen to each other. I know there were people with differing views on the committee, and they came together with support from the business community especially, and they worked something out. It isn't something that all of us are super happy with. There's things in here that I wish were different, but I'm so glad that we got something done, and I appreciate action and getting something done.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
This is Sarah Stout at 273 Main Street.
Okay,
I'd like to thank the folks who put this together and the council for considering it. I'm particularly in support of the new additions that are being considered in regards to the signage and in regards to sanitation. That's all. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, hearing no other discussion, I will go ahead and close public comment. I'm going to bring it back to the council. We'll go around one more time. Alderman Auk, any comments?
No.
Alderman Householder?
I do know this is something that has not just come up overnight. We, the city, planning and zoning, and the committee have worked a lot of hours to get this thought through and to come up with something that was equitable for everybody, but yet, as Jana said, it's not perfect. There's some things in there probably that don't fit with everybody, but I think overall for the good of our retail merchants, I think it's a good ordinance.
Thank you. Alderman Gillespie?
I'm kind of, thinking about what Dale said earlier. what was the thoughts on 12 days and done from the committee? I assume you were in on it quite a bit in P and Z?
Yeah, I think some of the other cities limited them, the transient merchants, 12 days done. And that was primarily to cover that period during the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, when you would see your tent vendors pop up generally. I think from an enforcement standpoint, initially when you said that multiple 12-day periods, from an enforcement standpoint, still would be better than what we currently have. So that's my primary thing from an enforcement standpoint, is how do we keep track of these vendors? And then having them outside of the central business, except for in the central business district, not allowed at all, I think that would be fair. If somebody wanted to do it 12 days at a time at one location outside a central business district.
Okay.
I still think it would be a lot easier to keep track of than, I'm gonna be here 3 months or more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe Commissioner Nome might want to weigh in since he's here.
So Commissioner Nome, if you have any thoughts to add, Alderman Householder has invited you to speak to this as you represent Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you there, Mr. Householder. I think that's a good question about the 12 days and done. And if indeed that should be some reconsideration given there for reviewing that again. I don't have a good answer for you on it as to which way it should be, but as a P&Z commissioner, I'd be willing to take a look at it and talk that through some more. Aside from that, just generally speaking, I believe, and I think speaking for the commission, there has been a lot of good conversation and dialogue on this issue, and I commend the work of the committee that was so instrumental in this whole process, and the work that they did in coming together on all of that made it made it much more feasible and practical to come up with what we came up with in the end. So I don't know if we would have gotten there as maybe as timely as we did without the work of the committee. So I really commend the committee for their efforts and what they've done to help promote this along. So I'm comfortable that we've really vetted this and that we've had good dialogue and conversation on it, and I think it's a good, solid proposed ordinance revisions, and aside from the 12 and done, which we'd certainly be willing to give that some more consideration if the council would like. But aside from that, I think it's a good, solid piece of work.
Thank you. So before I go to the other two aldermen, Brett, I'd just like to ask a question. So Alderman Gillespie brought up variance process. So have we ever done variance processes for something like this, or could it be a possibility to incorporate into something like this for the days?
So, with our current code, there's not a time limit. It sets, if you want so many days, it's this cost, and then if you want additional days, it's like $150 a day. So it doesn't cap the number of days that you can be there. But then the code goes on to further say if you're physically in the same spot for more than 90 days, then you're considered a permanent business, and then you don't have to pay the transient merchant fee. Well, the disconnect is how do we know for sure that they're going to stay there for 90 days? And we've actually had people this year and last year and the year before, oh yeah, we're going to be there for 90 days, but they're not. They're there for 50, 60 days and then they leave. Well, in our code, they're transient merchants, but they gave us the impression that they were gonna be here longer, so they'd be permanent businesses. So there's a disconnect there of saying, okay, well, what do? Do you charge them in advance before they can set up? Do you have some kind of a surety bond or something, performance bond that you can collect if they don't pay? And so I think where this is changing, it's really focused on the type of structure that they're occupying. You know, they're in a tent versus a permanent building. So it's changing that up. I think as far as a variance process, it's up to the council and to the P&Z Commission to determine whether you're going to allow time beyond that. You can structure it however you want. You know, maybe at staff level you could allow one renewal, but you'd have to go to P&Z or to the council to renew it any longer than that, or even the first renewal. Or you could say, nope, 12 days is it, you're not getting anything else. So, I mean, it's really just, to answer your question, is really how it's written in the code and what they're really reflecting the intent of this whole process has been. I think the value here is that it's been looked at. You know, this isn't something, like Dale said, this isn't something they just looked at for the past couple of weeks. I mean, this is a couple-year process at least.
Well,
And it was
been a year and a half, and then
Yeah.
prior.
And prior, there was efforts that were done as well to look at it. And I think there's just frustration about the ability for people to just show up without helping to improve our community and have those structures in place that are just here to reap the benefits and then leave town. And so, where's the balance? Where's the balance in that? You know, is it 12 days? Is that a sufficient balance? Maybe should it be 20 days? I don't know. It's where everybody's comfort level is, but I don't know that having an official variance process would be the way to address it. I think you'd want to build it into the hierarchy of the permitting process.
Okay.
Of saying either you can have one renewal or no renewals, or you extend the temporary to 20 days, something like that. But you know, the current code says 12 days, but you can renew it. So.
Okay. All right. Councilman Gillespie, any further thoughts, discussion?
No, my question about variances was more the central business district. If people wanted to do something down there, and let's say it wasn't a sponsored event, but a group of you got together and wanted to put some tents up and do some different things in different areas, you know, it probably would be a citywide event, but let's just pretend it's not. How would that work if you guys wanted to do something like that? That was where my question on the variance came from,
Okay.
or how it was in my head anyway. Sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I think, I mean, to me, if it wasn't under the umbrella of a special event, and special events are probably only gonna be up to, let's say, 4, 5, 6 days
Yeah.
for any special event that we typically have. You know, if it's something new that's being tried out, again, are you just trying it out, doing something special, or is it now becoming a longer-term, regular occurrence? Where's that magic line that differentiates the two? I don't know. You know, on private property, you don't need a special event permit because you're not using city property. But this rule is specifically geared for, you know, all transient merchants have to be on private property right now, and that's not changing. It's really how long are you going to tolerate the transient look and feel of whatever is being tried. And if it works, then I think we would want to encourage them to say, look, you've got a good business going here, why don't you build a permanent building and invest in our community? So it's trying to find that balance, and is 12 days the right balance? You know, everybody's going to have to figure that out for themselves and vote accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Doty.
I'm just curious how many people here in the audience are down in the central business district, have businesses. We got a couple, and then I know, if I can, I know Jenna made a comment about maybe some other possibilities for the ordinance, some things you thought might be worth changing or looking at a different way.
Yeah.
If possible, I'm just curious to hear what she has to say as far
That's
as.
fine. Ms. Seymour, can you address Alderman
Right,
Doty,
for
please?
me?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of us that wishes it encompassed all of Main Street, all the way to Deerfield Road. But that didn't come out of the committee, and I don't want it to not happen, because some of us wished it was more broad. But, so I'll take what we can get so far, but, I mean, Lorena, I know, is down in that other area, and I think there's some others that wish it was down in that block too, but.
And I know that was kind of one thing I got kind of just teetering in the back of my head from the whole trash can benches debate that we had the last meeting, is it's where it was brought up about how we always look at Main Street just as right here in downtown Hill City, but Main Street goes from Dollar General all the way down to Shoot Roosters.
Yep.
And so I do know that there's a lot more open private property on those outside of town, but at the same token, I actually do agree that I think maybe we should be looking at it where, if anything, just from Deerfield Road up past the school, or
Okay.
kind of encompass the whole main block for right now, and still leaves those outlying areas where we get more open lots, such as Vic's gas stations, the car wash, stuff like that.
Okay, so Alderman Doty, I'm going to invite Ms. Shea to come back up here and tell us about any conversations the committee had relative to how wide it goes. So just Central Business District. So
Well,
what was some of that?
It was the Central Business District businesses that drove both of these petitions over the last 11 years. Traditionally, in your Central Business District, you're gonna have your historical buildings. You're gonna have your buildings that have been here a long time. So that is the area that the intent was meant to prohibit those vendors from. There was there was strong opposition from a property owner to expanding that prohibition of the transient merchants from Elm to Deerfield. So limiting them to 12 days was kind of the compromise. We'll put up with it during Sturgis, because that's when those transients are gonna be here. It's when we have the most population of tourists. It was discussed, and eventually there was discussion of expanding the Central Business District area and taking it from McGregor to Deerfield, both sides of Main Street. Again, that was hit with opposition by a property owner. So, we're trying to kind of take everybody's thoughts and feelings on this issue into consideration. But personally, I have to agree with the Central Business District. They invest money in those buildings. And to have tents come in and take their sell similar merchandise, and be here for 30 days, 60 days. Their whole summer season, now they have 3 or 4 more competitors they did not have the rest of the year. And those people have, the people in tents, they have virtually no overhead. They're not paying for electric, they're not paying for water and sewer. And, this is really an ordinance that protects our businesses that have invested in the city.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything else, Alderman Doty?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so before I ask for a motion on this, just to talk a little bit about this, everybody takes pride and value in our town, and I consistently hear the town wanting to be recognized as a town that is not just a 6-month town. Now, if that does develop to a 12-month town, that's one thing, but based on the traffic that we've seen coming through here, I think it's highly possible for us to expect that we could continue to have this through the end of the year. An ordinance such as this supports that for our businesses. If you go into other areas that have different rules and handle things differently, some of them virtually become ghost towns after just a few months. And having to have a brick and mortar structure and have a business that's there, but then others that aren't there to provide services is is something that may dissuade people from coming here. When people have businesses open, people come here, they want to do something. So this I see in addition to the sign ordinance that was just passed by the council. I see this as a way that those businesses that are struggling, that do put that time and effort in there to try to keep their businesses open longer to the benefit of the city, in a way that we're really helping to recognize those businesses. So I just wanted to put my thoughts out on the table. What I will do right now is I will go ahead and turn it over to a motion. Do I have a, now, just reminding everyone, this is the first reading, okay? So this is not going to pass it. It will not take effect until we have another reading of the ordinance. This is just the first reading. So with that being said, is there someone who would care to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve. It'd be great if P and Z would look at the timeframes just a little bit to see. And of course, I wasn't in on the committee and discussions, but you guys were, and you guys were. If you can think about all of that, I think that'd be super.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Gillespie, motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Alderman Doty. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please, Stacia.
Gary Elk,
Yes.
Dell Householder,
Yes.
Jason Gillespie,
Aye.
Carl Doty.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries. Moving on to action item 7D. This is our second reading, correct? Resolution 2020-12, a resolution amending temporary sign permit fee. This is our first reading, okay. So this is for the permit fee.
It's the
There's
only.
no reading.
Okay.
There's one and done.
One and done, okay. So Danny,
This is resolution 2020-12, a resolution amending temporary sign permit fees. This resolution is the last step associated with the sign ordinance revision, which became effective on September 8th of this year. This resolution sets the fee for temporary sign permits. Previously, our sign code allowed up to 60 days in a calendar year to put out a temporary sign/banner. Applicants could purchase these permits in increments of 15 days at a time at a cost of $1 per day, up to 60 days per year. Some of our year-round businesses complained that during the shoulder and winter seasons, it helps to advertise specials, etc., and could the Planning Commission look at a longer permit that rewards the businesses who stay open longer? The Commission's response was the development of the year-long permit. A permit holder can only display one sign at a time, but can interchange the message sign out as they wish and not have to worry about coming into City Hall every 2 weeks for 2 months to renew it. In the old code, the cost was $1 per day. With the extension of the permit to a year, under our old code, it would have cost $365. The Commission took the advice of the attending public, and that cost was reduced by 2/3 to $120 for a year permit. The public who commented on this proposed fee felt $10 a month to have a daily banner/temporary sign was a great deal. The Commission also added to the temporary sign exempt list, meaning no permit is needed, feather flags with no wording, pictures, or advertising copy, grand opening and business anniversary signs for 14 days, A-frame sandwich boards, and with the transient merchants, with the revision, if it's passed, they will also get a temporary sign for the time limit that they're gonna be out there. And then also, no cost on the exempt list is citywide chamber or city council approved event signs. Those are already exempt. So, resolution amending temporary sign permit fee is the second page, and do you wish me to read that to you, or?
council?
I've read it.
Okay. Council has read it. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Shea. So now I'll open it up to the council. Would anybody like to start?
Quick question, clarification, Danny. The temporary vendors, is that sign permit included in their fee, or do they have to pay an additional $120?
For
their sign-
the
for a temp-
transient merchants?
Yeah.
It's included in that $750.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Householder, anything you'd like to discuss?
Sounds like a reasonable fee to me.
Okay. Alderman Ock?
I agree.
Alderman Doty?
No, I think it's reasonable.
Alderman Gillespie?
I'm gonna trust that due diligence was put into this and people's input was gathered as with the last item we discussed, so I have nothing.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead now and open it up to public comment. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Seeing no public comment, I will go ahead and close public comment. Council, any further discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, so we've got Alderman Gillespie, motion to approve, second Alderman Householder. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dell Householder,
Yes.
Jason Gillespie,
Yes.
Carl Doty,
Yes.
Gary Alk.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Resolution passes. Action item 7E, 439 Allen Gulch Road nuisance complaint. So I believe we have some people who have done research that need to speak to this. So what I'm gonna do is ask Brett to give us some details, then I will invite those folks that are involved in this nuisance complaint up to speak to the council prior to any council discussion. So Brett, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So, item E, 439 Allen Gulch Road, and up on the screen, if you're not familiar where the Allen Gulch is, this is Park Street, this is Pine Street or Back Street, and this is the Catholic Church. So Pine Street comes to the west and then splits off to Maggie Loader Road, which goes up to our shop. Allen Gulch is to the right, and the subject property is back there, 439. So what has occurred is that we've received correspondence from the neighbors, and it looks like there's one or two or maybe a few more than that here in the audience tonight. And there are concerns, and I won't, I guess I can read the letter just into the record here so that we all.
Please.
So, dear City Council members, we are the neighborhood of Allen Gulch. We have significant concerns regarding the conditions at 439 Allen Gulch Road that are in violation of various city codes. We understand there is a concerted effort by the city and Pennington County Sheriff's Office to address the situation, and our intention is to be as supportive of any and all remedial actions that can be implemented as expeditiously as possible. As you may be aware, the number of 911 calls and meetings with the sheriff from concerned neighbors has led to escalated patrolling of the area. This alone should be testimony to the ongoing, increasingly intolerable activities and conditions related to this house. These include, number one, the accumulation of large amount of garbage, refuse, litter strewn around the yard, increased traffic up and down the road by noisy vehicles, some at significant speeds, and this occurs at all hours of the day and night. Number three, unattended fires in the wood stove in the shed and open fires in the driveway. Number four, multiple episodes of unauthorized use of neighboring property and possessions and documented stealing of power from neighboring house. Number five, increased commotion of the continuous number of various people coming and going. Number six, uncontrolled dogs at various times on the property. Number seven, the house is in obvious disrepair, structurally questionable, and is unhealthy environment for people, especially children who have been known to frequent the house. This is because of years of squirrels and other animals living in the house while previously unoccupied, and mold from past water drainage into the house from multiple leaks in the roof. The house and the property are an eyesore to the neighborhood, which negatively affects the market value of all of ours. Number nine, we used to be a quiet, serene neighborhood. Now we are increasingly anxious, stressed, and at times fearful of the people and suspected activities going on in there. Number 10, according to the recent conversations with relatives of the deceased owner, the present occupants of the house and shed are unauthorized and eviction is desired. We, the neighborhood, stand ready to offer testimony to the above if needed, and are otherwise ready to assist the city and sheriff's office as possible to resolve this nuisance for the house situation. Thank you for your attention. Sincerely, Allen Gulch Neighborhood, and then various people listed on the letter. And that letter was sent to the sheriff's office, myself, and some people affiliated with the property. So if I can just give a brief kind of background of the property, it won't be long, and then kind of what the ask is from staff tonight, and kind of what we're still working on. So we'll give you the full flavor of what's occurred. This property was owned by somebody called, her name was Peg Henson, and she actually passed away about a year ago. Our understanding is that there's really not close family or relatives, and that nobody is really kind of technically, that we know of yet, in control of the property, and that either a friend or an acquaintance, or I don't know that if they're a family member or not, is currently living in that house. So we've had, over time, we've had kind of a laundry list of our own concerns and items that we've been trying to address as staff over the past year or two with the property. And the challenge is that we can never find somebody who is actively and legally in charge of that property to make headway. So it's been very difficult to get progress or to get compliance. So relatives have been contacted who are relative of the deceased, but they're not legally or officially in a position to make decisions. Just recently, there's been an attorney that's somehow involved in all of this, and we're still determining whether that attorney has the right to affect and legally make decisions for the property, and so that's being vetted. I know that we've outreached to this attorney, but we haven't received a call back. We've left messages. So it's actively being worked. It has been actively being worked for the past couple of years. And it's just frustrating because there is noise, there is trash, there are activities that shouldn't be occurring. I know the sheriff's deputy, and I won't speak for them, but I know that they have actively responded to complaints, listened to the concerns of the neighborhood. They have their own assessment of what's occurring at the property. And so I won't get into what they know and don't know and want to share. But I know that they are actively engaged in it as well. So I'm sure that the residents would like to say something tonight just to kind of bolster what's going on and what they've personally experienced. I guess the ask from the city staff at this point is we're going to still pursue a relationship with the attorney and see if this attorney is somebody who is legally able to make decisions. And if that attorney can't, then we need to find out who can legally make those determinations and try to get some resolution to it. But in the meantime, within our current code, within our enforcement section, it allows for the city council to determine properties and officially a nuisance. Of saying there's multiple things going on that warrant a designation like this. It opens the door to more actions, more things that the city can do to try to alleviate or abate what's going on. It's not a magic bullet. There's still paperwork. There's still time involved. And so it's another tool in the toolkit. Eventually, if we need to, if we can't find somebody who is legally responsible, we may need to go that route. But we're going to go through this other route, but we'd like to have this declared a nuisance just to have it in our back pocket so we don't have to waste time pursuing this, because it is unsanitary. It is an annoyance to the citizens that live around there. It is something that should be managed and taken better care of. I'm sure none of us would like the city government to come onto our private property and tell us what to do. And that's not the intent. The intent is to get compliance and to work with somebody. The problem is that the person who's living there right now, or persons, aren't the people that can make decisions and officially, and aren't at this point, they don't seem to be willing to make those decisions to help us out. So we need to apply whatever pressure we can and go down the path that we can in order to get the compliance that we seek. They just want to have decent neighbors to live next to. So that's about all I have, unless there's questions.
Okay. So before I ask if anyone would like to speak on behalf of this, as you have submitted this as an item, and this is your time for discussion, I would like to thank you for the work that you have done on this and commend the neighbors that came together for this. This is exactly how things can be presented to the city council. There was work that was done on this, there was discussion, and then it comes to the council for a definitive decision. It isn't a, can I do this, or what can I do, or whatever. This is a great example of how the city, working directly with folks in our community, can get things done and addressed appropriately by the council. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome anyone who would like to come up here and address the council with any information you feel that they should know, as the council has now been asked to declare this property as a nuisance property. Okay. Thank you.
My name is Brad Johnson. I'm from Rapid City, and our address is the 438. We're the last house on the right, the green cabin that was purchased by my aunt and uncle in 67 or 68 from Bob Burden. And through the years, they were school teachers in San Antonio who came to Hill City to get away from the Texas heat, and they came every year. And so from the time I've been 10 years old, it's been my aunt and uncle's cabin. Brenda and I now own that cabin, and the point of the 10 that are listed on this letter, the one that really was the first one to catch my eye was the eyesore of the neighborhood, because that was a problem. I mean, it's right across the street from our house. And it just looked terrible, and my first thoughts were, isn't this a violation of some sort of city codes, of just how terrible and how the driveway became such a junkyard. But my belief, based on conversation with Peg, who is now deceased, is this was a temporary favor to a friend in need, and with no intention of it becoming a transient occupation, basically a place where if I had to estimate how many people over the last couple of years have come and gone, it appears there might be, I don't know, 2 or 3 that are rather permanent, but other than that, there's several that through the year and through the summer kind of come and go. Sometimes they're sleeping in cars, sometimes cars are running at all hours, it seems. The thing that really irks me is the idea of stealing the electricity from Kathy when she lived in the trailer house next door. The dogs, early on there was a dog that would get off the leash, and it was a nice dog, it wasn't a dangerous dog, but it would come and run all around the neighborhood. But most recently there was a couple of pit bull looking dogs. I'm not saying they were pit bulls, but they had the head of a pit bull, so they were a dog to be feared, I felt like. If they were on the leash out in front, if there was any movement in front of the house, the dogs were barking. There was a time the dogs were off the leash. The owner could not get control of them, and I was going to take a bike ride at the time, and I was fearful. I didn't want to get out on the street because of these dang dogs running around. I didn't know what was going to happen. But the coming and going is, you have to consider it suspicious. I mean, it's abnormal. It's people showing up and coming to the door for a few minutes and then leaving again. I see people coming, opening the trunks of their car. It seems like they're unloading stuff out of the trunks of their car, and then pretty soon they're loading things back into the trunks of their car, and then they're leaving. And it's just you know, it's not a great thing to see across the street. And so those are my comments, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anybody else?
My name is Sarah Stout, 273 Main Street. I apologize if this is outside of the scope of determining what a nuisance property, but I'm employed with the Vera Center for Pediatric and Community Research, and some of the things that are being discussed about the behaviors and the people at this property indicate that resources may be needed for them, and some of those behaviors and activities are symptoms of larger problems. And I guess I'm just wondering if resources have been offered or communication has been attempted directly with these folks. Sometimes the police aren't the best people to talk when folks need help, but that's what we have available.
Okay.
If there is an app, I would be happy to help with that.
Okay, and your name again is, please?
Sarah Stout.
Sarah Stout. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Brenda Billings. I am the daughter and the executor for Kathy Denye's estate. Her property is right next to this property we're discussing. Currently, I am working with Deputy Southern. I am pressing charges for theft of utilities. He was putting in extension cords on multiple days in our property. We would unplug it, try to discuss anything with him. Wouldn't get anywhere. So we finally, I had reached my limit of all the stuff that we've been having to try to visit with this individual about and what's going on with the property. I am working with Deputy Southern and filing charges for theft of electricity. I know I've had to come to the city here and check for our water usage and stuff too. I know we've had some issues with that, and there were some issues with that prior to my mom's death. She was very afraid of Enoch, and he'd be coming to her house because his water was shut off and wanting jugs of water and all that stuff. And she would call us in the middle of the night because he wouldn't leave her house. And she was too afraid to, we kept telling her to hang up and call 911, but she was too afraid to do so because she has fear of retaliation from him. And she was a frail, elderly woman. We've had a huge issue with him dumping garbage and storing trailers and everything on our property. We have, some areas that are kind of ripped up because he's got people parking on our property and they can't just back off. They gotta rip the property up a little bit and, kind of damaging the property. It's making this very hard for us to try to sell this because of the looks on there. Plus, when you're looking at the property lines, they have a lot of their garbage and trash. It's the trailers, it's furniture, it's bicycles, and it's plain out garbage and debris. We have asked multiple times if he would remove it. We always get, yeah, and he uses his illness to say that he can't do this because he's disabled and stuff. I'm sorry, I understand he has some, disabilities and illness, but this does not give him the right to break the law and steal stuff off of our property, which we've had to go multiple times and ask him to return property from ours. Like, he likes to steal this big lawn wagon, to the point where we had to rearrange one of the buildings that is on there, this little cabin, so we can store our stuff in there without it having to be stolen and stuff. So I just really don't feel that he should be using his illness to break the law.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
My name's Pam Chain and I'm adjacent neighbor. My husband has grown up in Hill City and we come back every summer to enjoy being here, and we were looking forward to coming. This might be his last time coming, to having a nice, quiet, enjoyable time here, and that certainly did not happen. The commotion from next door is just getting intolerable. People coming and going all day, all night, different times. Just the cars, the vehicles, the trash. Initially, there's people now in the shed living there that have been unauthorized by the relatives. We are just looking for somehow to get some action to make this better. It's been going on for a while. People have been very tolerant. But now we would like some activity to make this all stop. And, it's, the entire neighborhood is involved, and most of them are here. And so we all have an invested interest in having our neighborhood back to being like it was. The people there are not authorized, and I don't know what the city can do to resolve that. But we certainly hope that something can start being done. It's just getting to be a nuisance.
Okay. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak?
Pat Belzak, 513 Elm Gulch Road. We'd like to invite the council to take a look at the property. I've seen slums that were in better condition than this property.
Not only that, but you can see most of us are elderly. And we have deep concerns about what goes on there. And it's not only during the day, it's all night long as well. Thank you for your time, and we hope that you'll be able to help us.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
I obviously not in that neighborhood, but isn't there a way of finding out who pays the property taxes? I mean, there's some way that you can contact who's got say over the property.
So the city has been working to do what they can to identify that, and whatever records are open, we have. This is the next step that we can take in order to help those property owners, is have it declared a nuisance property. The taxes are getting paid, so, you know,
And by who?
there's an attorney that's,
I can go in and pay his property taxes if I wanted to online. If I know the address that I wanna pay for, I can go in and pay his for him.
Well, that's a way to start.
So,
So
just saying.
all of her property is still in her name.
It's still in her name, but
So
someone else
it's not,
signed it.
it's not clear as to who's paying those bills, but that's what we're getting at.
Yeah.
We're getting closer and closer, but the real goal, the real intent is for us to find that person who is legally authorized to make decisions for the property and to work with them to get this abated. But the challenge is two things. One, once we find that person, there's no guarantee they're going to want to take action. And so the other part is we may never find that person who is in control of it, because it might be where the court needs to appoint somebody and it's in limbo right now. So the issue is we've got to find somebody authority. If those efforts fail, that's the whole idea of the nuisance, is that we've got that in our back pocket, that the city has identified that something needs to take place. We can take it the next steps legally in order to step in and make sure that it's picked up for trash and that the grass is mowed and the weeds are taken care of and whatnot, so.
okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Come on.
Hi, I'm Brenda Johnson. I live right across the street from this house. But what I wanted to let you all know is on Saturday, I ended up calling the cops because, first of all, my children, they like coming up, and I have grandchildren, but they came up that day right after I called. But what was going on right across the street was a man and a lady having a fight over a child, and they were pulling on him, and it was a terrible, terrible scene, and I ended up calling 911. And so my family is seeing all this, and my grandchildren are now scared to come up and enjoy a cabin that is a wonderful place to be. And so I just hope that you guys can help us so we can keep enjoying that, because right now they're scared. I would be scared right now if Brad wasn't staying with me up there, because seriously, they're, like last night, cars going all through the night. We have to use a noise machine at night because of the traffic that's going straight across the street to us. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak?
My name is Eric Cable. I live at 521 Allen Gulch Road. I've had interactions with the folks from there. I have two dogs that I walk daily, twice. And because I'm on a dead-end gulch up there, I walk them down Allen Gulch Road, down toward the Catholic Church, take a lap through downtown and back up the hill. On one occasion, the gentleman who lives there, my dogs barked at him. He looked me right in the eye, and I won't repeat what he said to me because it was foul, but he threatened to kill my dogs. That's totally unacceptable behavior. My dogs were on a 5-foot leash, under my control. Those dogs might lick you to death, but they most certainly would not bite you. As far as the history of that home goes, Bob Burden is my uncle. I've been going up that gulch since I was 5 years old. Bob and Teresa lived in that house at one time with my cousins Ross and Keith, who now own all that property. And they have confided to me that it should have been torn down 25 years ago because it's structurally unsound and unsafe. But the threats to me and my family and the stress is untenable. And I ask that you help us out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Brian Billings. Kathy Denai was my mother-in-law. She was scared to death of being there alone. After she passed, and we start seeing things disappear from the property and find them next door, I was pissed. I went over there, confronted him. I let him know they are not welcome on the property. It got to the point where I set up a game camera, and I've gotten pictures of them on our property. The constant battle with him over the garbage is just frustrating. There was piles of squirrel debris that they dumped probably 10 feet onto our property. It took 2 to 3 times talking to them to finally get some of that cleared up. Now there's a trailer full of garbage parked on, partially on our property. It's just getting to the point where it's been there maybe a month or so now. It's getting to the point where I'm ready to get the four-wheeler and just push it back across onto his property.
Okay.
So, whatever you guys can do, please do it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? I will not open it up again for public comment unless anybody would really like to speak after the council convenes and has their conversation. Before I turn it over to council, Brett, I have a question for you. So the staff is requesting that the council approve this as a nuisance violation. So what will that be able to do for these folks?
So, you know, we already have rules on the books that say, hey, you can't do this, and if you put up an illegal sign, you get fined and whatnot. So it's not like we don't already have rules in place. This one, I think the intent is that there's so much going on this property. I mean, you've heard it from the personal complaints of threats, the dog complaints, the theft complaints, the garbage, the trash and whatnot. So, you know, I've got a whole booklet full of outreach that we've done to try to address some of these things without any success. So the idea of declaring the property in general, just a nuisance, is the city council's formal way that's within the code in order to, this is the most severe, I don't know if that's the right word, but this is the top of the line indication from the council that this is a serious nature. We want to move forward with whatever steps we can take to abate the issues. And it may involve attorney time. It may, involve more close coordination with the sheriff's office. But now it's not just a staff enforcement of compliance. It's essentially saying, we've been down that path and we're still where they've described it. We're still at that point. So that this is just notching up our game of essentially saying, look, we have the backing of the city council to do what we legally can, to push forward with the abatement process, trying to get compliance, to work with the city attorney, to try to get some resolution to this, and not just a temporary resolution, but permanent resolution to it.
Okay.
And so it just opens up kind of the playbook, and we know as staff is that you're behind us, of saying that, yep, this is a problem, we've got to try to do what we can.
Okay.
So
So I see that we do have our sheriff in the audience today, and I'm hoping that if the council proceeds and gives permission, that you would work closely with him. My biggest concern over this is the safety that's being presented here. Threats, what's happening with these folks, it's not conducive to our community, and hopefully you can work directly with Doug and the rest of the Pennington County Sheriff's Department so we could do something to alleviate, or at least not even alleviate, because I don't think it will be possible until you have the ultimate resolution, but so these folks have some idea of what they can do or how they can be protected a little bit. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go around to the council, and I'll start with, who wants to talk first? Why don't we start with Alderman Elk?
Okay, from the photos that are submitted with this, I am in total agreement, and from what we heard, that we should pass something.
Okay. Alderman Householder?
Deplorable. I think Pat sums it up. The majority of these residents are up in age. They're vulnerable. This shouldn't be happening in our city. We've got to do something to stop it
Okay.
as soon as possible.
Alderman Gillespie?
It sounds like some of the right players, one of them being law enforcement, is involved, which is always good. And I'm more than happy to declare a nuisance. Does it allow the city and people to, I don't know, open or allow any action, a further different action toward the tenant as well by being declared a nuisance? Because that's problematic just as it is finding the owner and everything.
We're gonna have to work with our legal staff to talk about residency questions of legal occupancy. I think he was allowed to be there by the owner when she was alive, but I don't know that anything was written down or a length of stay kind of things. And so that will be a harder question to answer, I think. But we need to at least nibble around the edges of, okay, maybe there's a list, and I think the residents got it spot on, that there's a list of 10 different items. By pressing forward with our regulations and our ability to have some support and access to the city attorney and proceed this as best we can, maybe we can address 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of these items on the list. The other 4 might take a little bit longer, but I think eventually we can get there. And maybe this gentleman does need some other assistance, as was pointed out by the caller on the phone. I don't know if those services have been offered to him or not. But at this point, all the tools need to be on the table in order to try to affect change on the property. So the occupancy one is going to be more difficult. I think it's easier to try to address the behavior of the trash on the front yard and the removal of that. What's going to be harder is to affect the behavior of the person making threats and physically occupying the space, and what rights does the city or somebody else have to remove that person. So
you still got to find out the
we
legal
still have
property.
legwork to
Yeah,
do. Just
that's right.
because you're declaring it a nuisance, again, is not the magic solution that tomorrow we can say you're out of here.
It can just help in the long run.
Correct.
Or hopefully short run instead of 2 years.
Correct.
Mhm. Okay. Alderman Doty?
I just commend the residents of Allen Gulch for coming together and drafting this letter for us and everything, and I definitely want to see what we can do as city council with the sheriff's department and try to seek action to be able to help them out back there, and I know I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I have one question of Danny.
Yes.
Danny, once we declare this nuisance, they've talked about some possible structural issues that make the place unsafe to inhabit. Now can you go in as a building inspector and see if it's habitable or not?
I just wanna make sure that you guys get the verbiage right. You have to declare it a public nuisance, okay, per our code. I don't know. That's a great question to ask the attorney.
We will definitely need.
Yeah, we need more specific guidance from the attorney involvement to make sure we're stepping correctly, but we're also doing it as quickly as possible. Again, just going into private property and and we wanna make sure anybody who's on that property isn't in harm's way from the occupant, whether they own it or not. So unfortunately, it's a process, and we'll know more once we can get into it a little bit further.
Okay.
Sure, there's a way to condemn a building.
Yep. Okay, so the last thing before I ask for a motion, so hopefully we will receive the motion from the council that we're looking for. So Brett, between you and myself, I would like to take on the accountability and responsibility of keeping these people appraised as far as what progress we're making and how we're going, and also other steps in working with Doug and the deputies as far as how we're doing what we can in order to protect their safety, because it is a concern up there. I have family up there as well. And this is not a good situation. Whatever we can do as a city, we need to be able to support that. So that will be another thing that we will commit to you folks, is that we will also keep you in the loop as far as the progress that we're making on it. Okay? All right, so with that being said, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to declare 439 Allen Gulch Road a public nuisance.
Okay, motion Alderman Doty, is there a second?
Second.
Second Alderman Householder. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please, Stacia.
Carl Doty,
Yes.
Gary Elk,
Yes.
Dale Householder,
Yes.
Jason Gillespie.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carried. Again, I would like to reach out to all the residents and say thank you for what you've done to prepare this and provide us with information that will allow us to do what we can within the realm of the laws and the capabilities that the city has. We will work very diligently to make sure that this is addressed, and we will keep you in the loop relative to what's happening. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to discussion items. Item 8A, council P&Z discussion topics, and I believe this was put on by Alderman Householder.
Okay, last time we talked about communication between the P&Z and the city council. That's important going forward. We're all looking at the same things that are best for the city. So the planning and zoning had come up with 5 things that they had put on their top priority list, and so I asked the council to think about any things that either they are agreement with or they want to add to this list. The one thing I want to add to this list is when I was chairman, we had a committee looking at the commercial zones, and they did a lot of work on defining and redefining commercial zones. And then due to the pandemic and things, and it just got dropped. And I'd like to put that back on the list because a lot of work has been done in updating those codes. But, so if anybody else has suggestions or they think one of these maybe is something you wouldn't be in support of, that's what they want to know. We want to work together going forward.
So I would also invite the council to reach out to planning and zoning members, to have some conversations with them. So there's a lot more dialogue than we have historically had. So everyone is on the same page. If you have questions, everyone gets the information that they need. Okay? Any other questions or comments?
Dale, I know one thing I was kind of poking around at, talking with Danny about with the transient merchant stuff going on, to maybe look at trying to see if we can actually get something established as far as like food trucks. I think that should be something separate from the transient vendor type stuff, just because they come up on a weekend or during the day or something. Because I mean, we all know it's hard to find a place to eat around here in reasonable time during the summer hours and stuff.
That was briefly discussed at the last P&Z meeting, but as Danny said, this is something that is pretty detailed in its own right. So to try to tie it with the transient merchant, it just wouldn't work. But yeah, I think that Danny's in favor of it. I think it's favorable comments from P&Z that we could add that.
Yeah, I definitely feel it should be a standalone thing, just because the amount of research and the rules and regs and everything that are going to go into it. So.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So no more discussion on 8A. Let's go to 8B, updates on Unaccepted Avenue, Betty Matkins Avenue. Brett.
I will try to make this brief. I've got the image pulled up on the screen here. So I think this was our 2 meetings ago. There was a discussion about doing maintenance and repair and snow plowing and whatnot on roads that have not formally been adopted or accepted by the city. And one of those streets that we talked about was Meddy Matkins Avenue, which is right across from the Best Western Hotel. And it's also in the past been called Unaccepted Avenue. So there was a desire to kind of see, okay, what are the challenges of this area that we will know about that need to be addressed along with the acceptance of it? And then what does acceptance look like? What process do we need to do? So I've been working with the city attorney and we've gone through the history again, which we've kind of already done in the past, but we revisited it. And it's unclear as to the city's acceptance of that, so that's why it remained Unaccepted Avenue. There's no clear-cut acceptance of it. So if we want to move forward with acceptance of it, there's a process that Katie and I have put together that essentially says we want to make sure that adjoining landowners don't have any interest or wanting to retain ownership, or that we need them to release any potential ownership that they might have. So we can put documents together that will we get signed from them so that we know that we have a clear title to it and that there won't be future lawsuits. So we can do that. There may be a need to replat the right-of-way a little bit depending on what our future needs are, and we need to do an assessment of that. Specifically, the right-of-way in this area I think is only 40 foot wide. And in order to meet our subdivisional regulations, which should have been on the books when this was brought in, minimum right-of-way width is 50 foot. So if we're having people sign documents and pursuing with conveyance of land, there might be an opportunity to widen that out for right-of-way if so needed. It would just benefit the city in the long run that we make sure that we get the correct width of right-of-way. Now, again, if we look at it and say, no, 40 feet is wide enough, we pursue it. At least we've asked the question. We've looked at it and we're trying to do the complete solution to it. So we've got a legal path that we've formulated with the attorney in order to make that acceptance appropriate. So it's through miscellaneous documents, it's through quitclaim deed, it's through maybe a replatting or a combination thereof. The other thing that we looked at related to this, and these are like the true costs of moving forward with an acceptance like this. One is the road itself. You know, obviously it's not in a condition that we would like it to be in right now. We had our city staff look at that road, see what it would take to clean up the ditches, to re-gravel the road, shape it, and get it functioning properly. Our staff estimates that they could do the work. It would be about $20,000 worth of time, material, you know, the equipment, everything kind of bundled into that. Would cost the city the true cost would be about $20,000 to get it back to where it should be. On top of that, I know that there's been discussions about the water line that comes down and kind of comes over. And then there's the sewer line that comes through the development through this area. The water line, it's an undersized line. The replacement of that is estimated to be about $40,000 to make those changes. And then the sewer line stuff was addressed a few years ago with the cost estimates. At that time, it was like $88,000. I would imagine that number's probably jumped to $95,000 or $100,000 to redo the sewer lines in here, put in manholes, city mains for sewer, and just get it back to city specs, so to speak. So I'm not looking for an answer from you tonight. We have, we kind of now know what the challenges are for this section of street. Infrastructure questions, you know, there's gonna, if it remains a gravel road, there's gonna need to be culverts that are properly sized for the private roads that go off of it. Annual maintenance, snow removal is an ongoing cost. And then, you know, really just making sure that we've got the route, the correct amount of right-of-way that we need in order to convey traffic on it. Now, another item which we haven't really researched that well yet, but we need to is, you know, that street, essentially that right-of-way dead ends. You know, it stops, if I can zoom in, that right-of-way ends right here. There's nothing. There's not a hammerhead. There's not a turnaround. That would also need to be addressed somehow. Of okay, how do we accommodate that traffic can get turned around, fire, ambulance, our snowplow guys, that would be added to the list. And is that a matter of getting more right of way and creating a bulb at the end in order to create a turnaround? Again, future planning is that the end of that road, or is there an opportunity to take it further up? Is there more developable land going forward? So there's still more to look at. I don't think we necessarily have the complete picture yet, but those are some of the bigger pieces that you as council had asked us to put together. So again, about 95 to 100,000 for sewer, probably 40,000 for water replacement, 20 grand for roads, and then whatever the cost is for us to go around, get signatures, file documents, and get it squared away. So, that's what I'll have.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this? It was intended to be a status update to the council. Okay.
I just got a quick question. So, I mean, I know the residents down there are kind of supportive of doing something because of repairing the road. Will we have roughly the $60,000 to $70,000 in our upcoming budget to be able to pull the work off? No.
This work has not been earmarked within the 2021 budget. And I don't know what our current status of our street improvement fund is, but I can't imagine it's gonna be much because we're paying for asphalt replacement over at Matkins Court, with that road getting replaced. So I would imagine we're only gonna have like maybe $25,000 in our street improvement fund next year.
Okay.
Is it worth looking at accepting it and paving it, not paving it? Gravel, fixing the road at least, and then we circle back and look at the water and the sewer.
That's weird.
I just wanna put that on the table,
Yeah.
I guess, for everybody to think about, cause
Yeah.
that would take care of some of the issues there. Of course, that would require the easements, the right-of-ways, all that kinda stuff.
Right.
We sure could do that. The sewer lines have been functioning as is for a while. Not saying that that's the best solution for those people. We've kind of been crossing our fingers and hope that they don't have problems, because it could back up on them because it's small. It's like a 4-inch main. The water part is a concern with that hydrant. It's up at the end. It's up here. It just doesn't have pressure that it needs in order to adequately supply water, and so that's a safety issue. It's been a long-standing safety issue.
Well, if we went back and did water and sewer at a different time, we wouldn't have to destroy the $20,000 we already put into it.
Well, depending on where the water lines are, you'd have to dig up whatever you've created and then just put it. Not offhand, I don't. I believe the water lines are on this side of the street. I don't know if they're exactly.
You can go under an existing road, you can go beside them.
Yeah, but it would be a dirt road. It would be a gravel road, so it would be a lot different than if we went through and paved it.
Right.
So
I probably keep saying pavement, I don't mean to.
No, that's fine. No, you brought that point up. That's the same question that I had. Well, can we do the road? And all of this is needed so you as a council understand what we have out there. So you're right, we don't have it in the 2021 budget, but it doesn't mean that we can't look forward and plan it for additional years. So maybe it doesn't get done till 2024, right? But at least we have the information that we need to help you guys use that as a planning tool as we start to take a look at what our list looks like of things that have to be done. Because this is a street and it's only one of them. We've got other streets, we've got water, we've got sewer, and we've got only so much of a cash flow. So
it's just my concern that once we get it deeded to us and we take ownership, we're responsible for it. So then, once that happens, then we have to fix it and maintain it. So it's
you have it
make
exactly.
sure we got the money there to be able to do what we need to do for the residents.
Yep, exactly. Okay. All right. So then let's move on to report items. 9A, Common Council. Let's start with Alderman Doty. Anything you'd like to address with council?
I have nothing.
Okay. Alderman Gillespie.
Nada.
Alderman Householder.
So we have a library meeting, we did just lengthy discussion on whether I can say how much about Tammy or not, but we had a long discussion on personnel and how to manage the personnel of the library. It was a good discussion, positive. Last P&Z had a lengthy discussion on some lot splits out at Sunset Creek. A direction was established, I think, that they're gonna apply for a lot split. So a lot of discussion on the topics of what to go forth with. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. Alderman Out.
Nothing.
Okay, so I will try to make this as brief as possible so we can get some additional brief updates from Brett. So the first thing I'd like to do is read out a proclamation. It will be for October 5th. Executive proclamation. Whereas without adequate housing, it is impossible to carry out social distancing and good hygiene practices, and more than 109,000 individuals live below the poverty line in South Dakota in 2018, and 3,500 affordable homes are needed in the Rapid City area. And whereas Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity has served 288 families through affordable housing solutions and will continue to address the lack of decent housing around the world while reducing environmental impact by recycling building materials through habitat restores. And whereas secure housing not only facilitates opportunities for health improvement, civic engagement, investment, and wealth accumulation, but also provides a source of dignity and respect and serves as a basis for the pursuit of other rights. Inclusive, affordable, and adequate housing is the key to sustainable transformation of our cities and communities. And whereas the United States General Assembly has declared the first Monday in October as World Habitat Day, a time to unite in a world effort to promote policies to ensure adequate shelter for all. By raising awareness and advocating for universal, decent housing, we can change the systems that reinforce poverty housing and make affordable homes a reality for all. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Skorzewski, Mayor of Hill City, do hereby designate October 5th, 2020 as World Habitat Day and encourage all Hill City citizens to work towards the elimination of inadequate housing. And I believe that we've got to jump on that with the affordable housing community or the attainable housing community we have. Okay, future town halls. I just wanted to mention this a little bit. So I did have our first town hall meeting. It was attended by approximately 20 people. It was very good conversation and a way that question and answers can be utilized, and that's an opportunity for the community to speak to you as council, or to myself as mayor. Actually, it was. Carl was there, so he was able to represent council and have some interactive conversation. It was received very well, and the request has been put on the table, or the question to have more. I've made the decision that I will continue to have future town halls. Right now, I'm looking at a scheduling of maybe once a quarter to do this. We'll see if that is enough, too little, too much information, and ability to, again, interact with the public. So I will be creating a schedule, and I will be publishing that. Just a quick note on the current activities we had going on. So I am very proud of the city and representation. I'm also extremely proud of our students and the teachers and the principals that supported the school. We had our return of our homecoming parade on Friday. We had somewhere around 25 participants marching with floats. There were some outstanding pieces that were put together by the children, some for the children. There was a huge sense of community that I felt as we had that parade, and it definitely was very well received. I'd like to thank the council for supporting this effort, as it was something that really was driven by myself in representation of the city, working directly with Blake, and of course we couldn't have done it without Janet Vitovic-Beely from the chamber, who actually organized everything and pulled it off nicely. I'd like to thank the Public Works Department and the city staff for doing the cleanup afterwards. It wasn't that long of a process, but it still helps to have us all pull together. So hopefully you can expect to see that in the future, and we'll be able to do some more planning on that. Next meeting, I will have a discussion item to talk about the liaison role. I'd like to address it with this council. I will have some recommendations and suggestions for that, and how we can handle it going forward. So we will have some additional conversation on that. The last thing that I just put on the list, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people here to hear this, but there were some questions asked today relative to interactive communication and hearing questions and discussions from the public. This right here is the Robert's Rules of Order, which is utilized by our organization as well as other federal and state organizations to run meetings. This tells you the protocol that's necessary. While I understand that some organizations run theirs some way, I would invite any of you to listen into or attend a Rapid City Council meeting, a Pennington County meeting, or even a school board meeting to understand that the purpose of these meetings are for the council to conduct business. It is not intended to be a place where there's debate, there's open conversation or dialogue. Information presented by the public needs to be done in such a way that it helps the council make a decision on the items that they have. There's no one that sits here on council, that sits in City Hall, or myself as mayor, that would not speak to somebody if they had a question. And I'm very grateful to the folks on Allen Gulch as they actually did the right thing. They didn't come to a meeting and say, well, why isn't this house taken care of? They contacted the city, they worked together, they put together the recommendation, and we came up with a solution. These meetings are intended to be meetings for the council to get business done, and while it is important to have input, there's appropriate times that are provided. Other than that, I have nothing else, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Brett.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few quick updates. The Major Lake Bridge project, at your last meeting, you authorized the joint financial agreement with the state to do the 80-20 grant money or cost share money for that bridge project. All of that's been signed, delivered to the state. I got back signed copies. It is now in the bid letting office. The bid letting office can take up to 2 months to process the bid letting and get it on their calendar, so I don't have a bid letting date or a closure date yet. I did have some discussions with the concerns that you brought up at the last meeting about that the bid letting is going to allow the contractor to work on it up to a year from now. What I received back is what they're finding is that they're not dragging those projects out for a year. Contractors are wanting that so that they can find a place to plug in that project into their master calendar. Then they come in and they do the work, and the work here is probably about 4 or 5 months, just depending on weather, that they will come in, they'll do the job within that time frame. The likelihood of it being open and disrupted for a whole year is not, they understood what the question was, but that's not a concern of theirs, that it's gonna be drug out for a whole year. If we have access concerns, I'm actually trying to figure out if there's different ways that we can maybe do some temporary access through there to make it a little bit more viable. So that's something I'm not prepared to talk about, other than I'm still brainstorming stuff and trying to come up with good solutions. So that's the only thing there. The Bull Run subdivision, I was up there Friday, I was up there today. They're finishing up the pouring of the curb and gutter up there. They've got just a little bit left to put into place. It's looking amazing. It's like a TV show with, you see the house go in and or that's dilapidated, and then they rip it down and put in something new. It's a pretty phenomenal process, a lot of time and energy and equipment, and gosh, everybody's put in so much into that development. It's gonna look amazing. I don't know if anybody's been up there, but there's like 2 houses already framed out up there.
That's pretty cool.
Shingles on them. Yeah,
It's
and
pretty
shingles
cool.
on one.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy how fast it's going. They fully expect to start asphalt, the paving of roads. I don't know where they're gonna start, but they're starting Wednesday of this week. So they're to that point to put kind of everything back together, and you're really gonna see some changes with that coming. There's also been some work done with the private neighbor to the northeast about putting in an additional stick of city main pipe to get water potentially out further north there. And so we've kind of facilitate meetings to make that happen. The owner of that property is paying for all of those improvements, so exciting stuff. Water reservoir project.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
When you come down the hill, top of the hill court, all right, like you come down Mary Beth and you have a guardrail.
Yep.
What about protection for cars coming down that
Yep.
street?
Travis, our Public Works Director, and I just had that conversation just last week, that same exact question. We actually are gonna work with the contractor for that location, so they're not sliding down top of hill into the houses that are down below with some kind of a bollard system or some kind of a retaining wall or something. And then there's actually another spot on the other side where it goes downhill, but then it kind of curves at the same time. We don't want people going into that person's garage or going off. There's kind of a drop off that goes right into our wastewater plant right below it. So we're making sure that those are addressed and that we've got something suitable in there. So, yep, great question.
Thanks.
The Water Reservoir Project, Hale continues to work with Rural Development about this edit to the Spherozoid. They're wanting more details of the location and how that tank detail would be it. So he's working on it with the tank company. He's also got to do some updates to the annual engineering agreement updates that need to be done. So we're making the progress that we can on that. It's just kind of a red tape jungle, unfortunately. Public questions from the last meeting, and I'll cover this really quick. There was a question asked about city right-of-way and responsibilities, and this is kind of washed out, I don't know why, but I'll turn this off. So it's kind of hard to see, but this is a section of road over on Bishop Mountain Drive, and I just use this to kind of prove a point. There's a little line that comes right through here. If you can't see it, there's a line there, and there's a line here that mimics it on the other side. These two lines define the edge of our city right-of-way. Okay, so it's city-owned property. From that point to this point, everything in between is owned by the city. From this point that way, it's privately owned. From this point this way, it's privately owned. So this is the right-of-way. So the right-of-way here is probably, I don't think I measured it, it's either 60 or 70 feet, somewhere in there. It's pretty wide up and through here. So what happens is the city owns all of this, but as you can see, the road only occupies a very small portion of it. So we're talking like maybe a 24-foot driving surface, and then by the time you add ditches in there, you might have a 40-foot footprint, with ditches here on either side and then the road. But you can see that it doesn't necessarily occupy the whole entire right-of-way. That road is kind of massaged in there. So you can see there's this strip of right-of-way here between the ditch and this line. This is actually private, it's city-owned property. But the question that was asked was, well, who's responsible for maintaining this? Well, in this case, this property owner, they need to trim the trees, they need to cut the grass, they need to water their flowers or whatever it is. The city's not going to maintain this. We will do road ditch maintenance, we will do road maintenance on either side, but we're not gonna go in there and cut your grass. Over here, that actually gets kind of worse, where you can see the road hugs the line over here of city property. That makes this even wider for that property owner here to maintain that piece of it, even though it's owned by the city. So the expectation is that those residents are trimming their own trees, they're mowing their own grass, taking care of those things. We will clear out the ditches and make the water flow appropriately. So it's kind of standard stuff with all cities. And I think if I can address, there was a question asked earlier about in tonight's meeting, and I will follow up with the property owner, who pays for paved streets? Well, in the case of Bull Run, getting back to Bull Run, it was a TIF, and so the developer is putting all the improvements on, and then he's getting reimbursed through property tax, essentially development of however that gets developed out and the value added to it. In the case of streets that aren't paved currently and probably should have in the past, I don't know if the rules were on the books at that time that we were required paved streets. Either that or the rules of paved streets weren't enforced and somehow they got out of it. So ideally, developers are on the hook for streets, or that there is a mechanism that is on the hook to pay for it. With TIFs, you've got 20 years to make it pay out, and if it doesn't pay out in 20 years, the developer's still on the hooks to pay for all of those improvements that they promised. So I will follow up with the property owner. Last thing, just FYI for everybody, I've been summoned for jury duty. And it's not the regular jury duty, it's the 2-month district court, whatever start, and it starts in 2 days.
Federal.
I don't know if the court is currently that active or not, but in case you can't get a hold of me, I might be in jury duty. So
Okay.
that's all.
We have, so with no further business, I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session after a 5-minute necessary break.
So moved.
Alderman Gillespie, second Alderman Doty. All those in favor?